We might be in the third quarter of the Ravens-Chiefs game. I mean, what more can you say, man? What more can you say?
I mean, we said so much already. I'm just kind of in that like, yo, let's get these last couple of slow drafts. Let's finish them up. Let's go, boys. I'm ready for some football. Like I'm almost in that like my takes are set. I'm capped with all the takes I can have. I'm ready to be hurt. Let's do it.
Yeah, at this point I'm like over all of my drafts. I have 2 drafts. You and I are in one draft together. It's a slow draft, and I think we just made the turn at like 12, 13. So we're, pretty much going to finish that before the weekend's over. I've got one more draft. I'm going to do the Megala Bowl from the Fantasy Footballers, and I think I'm doing that Monday morning at like 9 a.m. Because it's an off day. And then I have my oldest keeper league, which is my college league from my college buddies, which is, we were just talking about off the camera, is completely it's a complete cluster fuck. So anyway, we're going to get into some values tonight because we have done sleepers, we have done do not draft list, we have done fantasy football league winners. Why not get into some values? I know you're still finishing up a couple of your notes, so let me just start here at the top. Y'all know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, jump on over to the Fantasy Football Tavern. Give my boy Kendall a subscription click as well. Follow me on Instagram, _extra_point_FFB. If you are not someone that can tune in live, you're driving in the car, you want to go for a walk with the dog, listen to the show on Spotify and Patreon. If you prefer written content, go over to dynastyprosfootball.com. You can check out my written content there. And then the same as always, the ask obviously is continue to, promote the show, continue to help build the brand, throw this link into your leagues, bring it to your work, put it in your Discord channels, wherever you are talking fantasy football. 2 big announcements for the show itself. The first one obviously is we are moving starting next week to 4 p.m. Pacific time, because it's football time, boys and girls. So we are not going to be doing the show in the middle of Thursday night football because, like you, I'll be sat on my couch watching the game. And then obviously with Get Right Fantasy Network, we are going to be having, I think, 6 days a week content now, 7 days a week with Mike doing the show on Sundays. So
all 7, man.
Jump over to Get Right Fantasy Network. You can catch myself, Kendall, all the boys. Everybody has kind of their own podcasts, video casts that they do. And then obviously we have our main shows. So we'll be doing start sits of the week, breaking down games, talking through all kinds of different injuries. Hopefully it doesn't affect you. We know that it will, but make sure that you are tuned in throughout the week so that you are ready to set those lineups prior to Sunday kickoff. Lastly, I'm running my weekly pick'em tournament that I always do for confidence points. It's on Yahoo. It is $10. DM at P Ruskin on Sleeper. Shoot me an email, shoot me a text if you have my phone number. If you want to jump in that league, and we'll get you a spot. It'll be a lot of fun. So I'm ready. If you're ready, we're going to go through some values at each of the different positions tonight. And I want to start with, this one's cheating a little bit. I'm just going to preface it that way because he was on our league winners show, but he is still a value. We got ADP quarterback 15. And this gentleman is going to be playing 14 out of his 18 games in a dome. No weather. He is fantastic in a dome. Last year, in 2023, he was the quarterback 7. He threw for 4,575 yards, 30, count them, 30 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. If you don't know who we're talking about, it is none other than the Detroit Lions. You're good enough for Detroit, Mr. Jared Goff. So I don't really see a world, Kendall, where, number one, he doesn't outperform his ADP. I do think he's going to finish inside the top 15. I also think he's going to finish inside the top 12. So I think you're getting a quarterback 1. You can get him in I just did a mock in my keeper league. Now it's a keeper league, so it's a little bit skewed, but I just got him in the 11th round. That's stupid for a QB1. In a single quarterback league, I'm okay if I just go and grab all the value I can possibly get at the wide receiver, running back position, and I normally historically am a late tight end drafter, but if I decide this year that I want to go get one of the top 5 tight ends, and maybe I do go grab Laporta, I'm fine with Jared Goff as my QB1 in a single quarterback league, and obviously in Superflex, I'm more comfortable with him as my QB2. But am I this is a value. Like, there's no way outside of injury and everything we talk about presumes health. Do you see a world where he doesn't outperform his ADP and return those kinds of numbers with Amon-Ra, Jamo, Laporta, Gibbs, and Monty there?
I don't see a world at all. I mean, I think he's like the definition of Vegas says the offense is going to be great. The offensive line, I think PFF had him as the second ranked in the NFL. They have the most ridiculous. I think they play one game outdoors, which is huge. Historically, that is something that we've always said is a weakness in Goff's game. He can't play in cold weather. It eliminates his biggest weakness. Yeah, I mean, he's got all upside. And we've been hyping up Jameson Williams. I think we believe we don't like coach speak, but if there's any coach I don't think knows how to lie, it's the coach of the Detroit Lions, biting kneecaps off. All they need is for one, if Monty goes down with an injury too, I mean, they're gonna all the goal line stuff is gonna be, like passing work and stuff. So I see it as a situation where great safe floor. You might finish around QB 10 if they don't if it's more rushing touchdowns, but with an absolutely elite, easily top 5 ceiling if that goes a little more towards the passing touchdowns than the rushing touchdowns. And I certainly think it can get there. So I'm in love with this pick.
I mean, Jared Goff to me is somebody that if you are doing, I know we got Rafi in here tonight. What up, Rafi? We love you, brother. He's got, look at this, man. This is kind of what I expect. He's got a draft tonight. He basically got one every night this weekend, right? Holiday weekend. I know this. Obviously, last weekend was a pretty big weekend for redraft. This weekend is the biggest weekend because it's right around the corner. Go get Jared Goff. Just do yourself a favor. And look, if you're in a one quarterback league and you just, don't want him as your QB1, go get him as your QB2. I don't always love having that quarterback taking up that roster spot. I'd love to have an extra skill position guy, but to me, I don't understand the disrespect. And I want to frame it this way, Kendall, because you and I have been staring at this board since the Super Bowl, to be fair, right? Because you and I are into Dynasty. That's our big thing. So we know the board inside and out. I think what I'm seeing with Jared Goff's depressed ADP is because I believe that the other guys that are being valued ahead of him weren't healthy last year. And the assumption is that Joe Burrow, right, Anthony Richardson, Kyler Murray, right, those guys, maybe not Herbert, but like at least those three are going to come back into the QB1 fold. Is that kind of how you see it? Or is it just because of the age? Like, I'm having a hard time poking holes in the why Jared Goff is the 15th quarterback off the board when, respectfully, you and I both love Caleb and we love Jaden, but they're still rookies. This isn't next year where we expect Caleb and Jaden to be established as what we believe their ceiling, not their ceiling, but what we expect that they are going to develop into. I don't know. Tell me that I'm crazy or just maybe everyone else is wrong, right? Like, I don't get why he's QB 15.
I think it's a combination of two factors, right? It's most of like the fantasy football analysts, right? When you're doing a lot of shows and you got to talk about your favorite pieces throughout most of the offseason, it was too popular to talk about like the rookies because the rookies are legitimately good this year. Now they're still rookies, but they're the best we've seen in a long time. And so it's easy to be in on several of them. Right. And then there's like year 2 emergences on very good offenses that I think are just a little more exciting to talk about because like they were a bigger part of the reason that they moved their teams forward. Guys like Purdy, who had a ridiculous touchdown rate. The emergence of Jordan Love, particularly at the end of the season and in the playoffs, was the reason that team won. When you think of Detroit, you don't think of Goff, right? You think of Amon-Ra and Laporta, but you think of them over Goff, and you definitely think of the most ridiculous running game. I think it just had to do with, where does their offense come from? Is it Goff, or is it that he has sort of a free pass? I think the truth is it's a little bit of both, but he's getting buried in the rankings because in your head, it's the other pieces are great, and that's why he goes. And particularly, this is the first year I think we're ranking, guys like Caleb and Jaden ahead of him, where normally in previous years, I'd say we take dart throws on those guys, but we wouldn't straight up rank them above guys like Goff.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'll give Jaden the pass on the rankings simply because of the rushing, because we know fantasy football scoring is broken, right? Like Justin Fields, not a good quarterback, lost the job. Everybody's in and out of Pittsburgh on who's going to actually be the guy there, but he broke fantasy football because of the rushing upside. It's the reason partially why I think you and I especially would say that we believe the ceiling is a top 3 season for Anthony Richardson. I don't expect Anthony Richardson to even be in the top 10 in terms of passing yards this year. But the rushing ceiling is so freaking high that's why he's going to get to where we believe, assuming health, that he's actually going to get there. So got some guys in the chat here talking about this, which is good. I would love to start this off with a bang. How can someone love ASB, Laporta, Gibbs, and not like Goff? Thanks, Rafi. It's kind of, I mean, I'm trying to avoid, because I know one of the guys you're going to talk about. I'm trying to avoid making that comp. I will let you do it when we get to one of your quarterbacks here in a second, but it's important to keep that in mind. I love Goff because who do people think is going to give Amon-Ra Laporta? Yeah, I mean, exactly. Yeah. So Raven Show saying I love him because who's going to actually feed them the ball? All right, let's move on. Goff's a value. I think everyone agrees. It's just, to me, Jared Goff is somebody, I'll just say it this way. I'm comfortable if I really want to load up at other positions. I'm comfortable with Goff as my QB1 in single quarterback, and I'm very, very excited about him as my QB2 in a super flex league. If I take a rushing, more mobile quarterback, if I get a Lamar, if I get even a Jaden Daniels, I would take that combination, right? In super flex, Jaden Daniels with Jared Goff would make me feel really, really good about my quarterback room. So what you got? What you got for us at the quarterback position?
At the quarterback. So this player is actually, this is my other version of Jared Goff. I think you can make a lot of the same arguments that you can about Goff as this next player. Explosive offense. We're in love with the weapons. And that's none other than old Matthew Stafford, former quarterback of the good old Detroit Lions.
There it is.
So for Matt Stafford, for me, I think the whole community agrees that Puka Nacua is pretty fantastic at football. Cooper Kupp is healthy currently, and in my opinion, I think we talked about it the last time I was on the show, where Cooper Kupp is a league winner for me. I think he's definitely a top 15 wide receiver at a minimum, if not higher. He goes far later than that, but there's a chance to have two legitimate top 12 level wide receivers on the same offense. And if you hear the way, I'll even say this in his favor above Goff. When you hear NFL players talk about Matthew Stafford or former teammates talk about him, in any interview that I've seen, they're looking at the camera trying to convince you that for real, when he's on, it's like Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes level good. He's legitimately elite when he's on. He's gotten buried by, there's been some weird seasons and some injuries, but I mean, the guy's incredibly talented. I'll never forget some of the plays where he's just made a steal too. I mean, he had a broken arm, he had a broken something, and he just went back on the field and threw a touchdown pass. That's the type of guy he is. He's magical. I don't think Puka would have nearly broken out even if you just give him Jordan Love. I don't think it happens that way. Personally, I think it's Stafford being just very elite at what he does and knowing how to throw guys open versus making that happen. So based on that reason, there's no way I think you can have Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp ranked that highly when you're not bringing Stafford along for the ride. Big thing too to consider is their defense is awful. I mean, really, really awful. They invested really heavily into the O-line. Who was I listening to that? I think it was the Establish the Run guys. I had a really, really good episode the other day where they're going over, it was a week or two ago, they were going over offensive lines. And the whole point was the Rams have a sneaky good offensive line. They spent up incredibly on their interior O-line. I think there's going to be the ability for them to just absolutely ball out. All we need is the touchdowns to go a little more passing than rushing. And I think he can have a very, very good season. There's no way he couldn't finish as QB 7 or 8 and be a very, very good value. He goes 144 overall, QB 20. For me, if I have a thin bench, but it's also a league where, it's full PPR, double flex, where I can just go ham on the position players. I'm not loving zero RB. I'd rather go hero RB. This allows me to take an elite tight end, elite at all the skill position players, and then get him for essentially free late in the draft. And I think it gives you a very elite ceiling to your team.
Yep. I mean, and look, you got Joe Ortiz in the chat here saying I took Puka, then made sure I got Stafford later. If you get Puka or Kupp, Stafford to me is like the no-brainer late stack that you can go and grab. We just talked about Goff as my first player, right? If you go get Amon-Ra, if you grab Laporta, you can grab Goff easily. So, there's value in what we're talking about. Obviously, the show is values tonight, but there's value in some of these guys that are paired with these first and second round ADP wide receivers that you can go get that stack for cheap, whereas you're going and paying premium prices to get Lamar stacked with Andrews, right? To go and get Patrick Mahomes stacked with Rashee Rice. I mean, even Michael Pittman and Anthony Richardson, if that's a stack you're into, is still a 4th, 5th round back-to-back cost. So, yeah, I think there's some guys here that you should be looking at, especially if you've grabbed the elite talents up top. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this next guy. We haven't seen a ton from him yet, but I do think he's a value. It's actually somebody that historically I've been kind of out on, but I find myself rising. I find myself coming around here. He's coming off the board. ADP overall 173 is the QB 24. You can get him for nothing. In Superflex, I would target this player as my QB2. In single quarterback, I'm going to be honest, Kendall, I'm probably out in single quarterback, but in Superflex, I'm in. And it's Will Levis. And there's 2 reasons that I've come to rise on Will Levis. Actually, 3. The first reason being is that you went from Treylon Burks with Hopkins, with D-Hop last year, to Ridley, Hopkins, Boyd, Pollard, and Spears, who was there, but he was a rookie, and now he's certainly more established and seems to be the 1B. I think he's the 1A to Pollard. I'll be honest. I think Spears has more value in that offense later this season than Pollard does. But here's the other 2 reasons that I'm really excited about Levis. Number 1, I don't think Tennessee's defense is great, and they're going to chuck it. And he can throw a good ball. He throws it deep. He's got decent accuracy. His first game, he threw 4 touchdowns. And he only threw 4 touchdowns the rest of the next 7 games. But Cincinnati threw the ball the 2nd most in the NFL last year. Why is Cincinnati important? Because Brian Callahan's now the head coach of the Tennessee Titans and was the offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. So I'm not putting Will Levis and his offensive weapons in the same category as Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is I think you have a team who in their own division is going to, we assume, be playing catch-up in at least 4 games against the Colts and against the Texans. If the Jaguars do what, I'm not a huge believer in the Jaguars this season, but I think you'll have some competitive games with the Jaguars and the Titans. So their own division should be competitive. I think they're going to be losing games. I'm not super sold on Pollard or Spears being game changers. So I think Levis is going to throw it. He throws a good ball. If you're in a super flex league and you go hero quarterback and you want to go grab running backs and wide receivers, go get Will Levis in the 4th round of your super flex draft. And I think you're going to be pretty happy with that. So I'm out in single quarterback on Levis, but in super flex, I think I would take a shot on him if that's the kind of build that you want to approach. So let me ask you this, Kendall, before we move on. Would you rather have Will Levis or Aaron Rodgers?
Will Levis or Aaron Rodgers? Ooh, the fact that it's close is a little bit telling, right? I think I'm gonna take Rodgers here, but it's close. But I do think I will say Levis easily has the higher ceiling. When it comes to like my best ball drafts, I took a lot more Levis than I did Rodgers. The weapons and what he does with the deep ball is pretty nice.
So let me give you these names real quick. You ready? We'll just go quick fire. Levis or Geno?
Geno.
Okay. Levis or Nix?
Levis.
Levis or Watson?
Levis.
Levis or Mayfield?
Dave Canales gone.
Gone.
They're like tied for me, but I hate Baker, and I just don't believe him without Dave Canales. I'm taking Levis.
Okay, and then the next player above Baker is Stafford. So I just went through the ADP of quarterbacks, and you took Geno, so that's fine. But it's basically when you get past Aaron Rodgers' cousin, Stafford, it's Baker, Watson, Nix, Geno, Levis. And you would take Levis over 3 of those guys. So right away, that's putting him into a QB2 position. So I think it's possible, right? You add Calvin Ridley, who's a great route runner. D-Hop seems to be like he's going to be healthy. Pollard and Spears both catch passes. It's the one thing I don't like about them is they're basically the same player. You know what I mean? Like they don't have like kind of a goal line like Monty and Gibbs, different players, different skill sets. So yeah, to me, I think Levis and Superflex is really interesting. So who's your second quarterback?
So it's Jaden Daniels. I'm in. I'm in on Jaden Daniels. Here's the weird thing. Here's the crazy thing about it. When I say like I'm in on Jaden Daniels, I don't know how he's going to do. I don't know how to project him. I don't know how to project the offense. Here's why I like Jaden Daniels as a value. I think he can be Justin Fields, who is a pretty poor NFL quarterback, but is still a pretty fantasy darling type of player, right? if I'm taking someone, I've got all my other skill position players gone. He's not overhyped. He's still going in the 9th round. I think pretty typically QB 14, 112 is where he's sitting at on Sleeper. I'm seeing him go a little bit higher, more early 9th, late 8th at this point. But that's not terrible cost. I was a guy that was very in on Lamar his rookie season because you could get him hyper late. And, I was always, I want to stream the position if it comes to it. I was just a late quarterback guy. I always have been. And when I can see the upside of all he has to be is above average at passing, rushing is just a cheat code, especially in those 4-point passing touchdown leags.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know how he's going to do, but I know his tight end room is better than expected. Sinnott, I think, is pretty good. Ertz is a little bit underrated, but there's lots of stuff they can do there. Eckler is a glorious addition to that backfield, and I think he could. If the O line's poor, I think there's some things that can happen there. I don't think the team does particularly well. That also means he needs to chuck it in the 4th quarter, which isn't the worst thing in the world. I just see a lot of upside. I don't see Lamar level upside. Trust me, I'm not saying that. But I think he has a chance to just, do what Kyler Murray did, but with less passing volume and less touchdowns, right? I don't see him as a top 4 quarterback, but I do think with the rushing, he could easily hit that, QB 6-7, outproduce his ADP, and also have, week winning performances or playoff winning performances. And that's ultimately what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we know that the fantasy scoring model is broken. I love what you said about the 4-point versus the 6-point. To me, Jaden Daniels' value in 6-point is lower than 4-point because the rushing upside. I'll be honest, I'm targeting Daniels as my backup quarterback in single quarterback. If I'm going to roster 2 quarterbacks, sometimes I don't. And I stream the position and just go hero quarterback and try to get one of the top 5 guys. And if that guy gets hurt, your season's probably pretty shot at that point anyway. But are you comfortable with Daniels in single quarterback as your QB1?
I'll answer a chat question and yours at the same time.
Yeah,
they're relatively related here. Okay. Yep. There's a big worry that there's very little offensive weapons we can feel good about. Yep. Right. And I do like Terry McLaurin. I do think he's always been a talented wide receiver, despite quarterback play. He still has highlight reel catches a couple times a season that make you remember, oh man, he is pretty legit. He's not totally elite, but he is pretty legit. Here's my takeaway though. My point is, coach has got to win games, okay? And I think they're going to be a bad team. Who's the best offensive weapon on that team?
Yeah,
it's Jaden Daniels.
Yeah,
Jaden Daniels. If his coach wants to keep his quarterback, and wants to keep his job, they're going to have to make something happen. And I think a lot of that is going to be Jaden, go make something happen. And I think Jaden specifically, rookie quarterbacks that have rushing, the game comes at them real fast. The players are faster and stronger. The one thing they can do is outrun linebackers consistently. Yep. I think if he's running for his life, that's going to be fantastic because I watched Justin Fields run for his life. You see my background. I watched him run for his life professionally, but he ran that way very far and very fast for a lot of yards. I think Jaden does that and does it well enough that the offense could be a tire fire. He could be the box scorer for that team.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, I'm in on Daniels as well. I'll be honest, he was someone I'm glad you put him on as your value pick because if you hadn't, I would have. And I think it's great we got to talk about him. I think it's going to work. You know what I mean? I think he reads the game well. I think he's going to do just fine. Rushing upside is always going to be there. So, yep, let's move into the running back rooms and talk about 4 players here that we like. And I'm going to kick us off here with ADP overall of 116. You can get this player in the 10th/11th round, depending on your draft and format, but he's coming off the board as running back 38. He finished as the RB 16 last year. He's being drafted as the RB 38. He had 813 yards, 4 rushing touchdowns. It's Jerome Ford. And you can say what you want about Cleveland and all these things. Here's the facts that you cannot dispute. Number 1, Chubb's on IR for a minimum of 4 weeks. If you follow any type of, fantasy football content, almost every person out there will tell you it's not going to be week 5, Nick Chubb back into the starting lineup. Here's 100% of the carries and goal line work. He's still rehabbing. He's going to take time to get ramped up. So that 4-week IR, I'll be honest, I probably put Nick Chubb back in the lineup like week 6 to 8.
That's just minimum, right?
Yeah.
They don't have to take him off earlier. I think people are forgetting he's not back week 4.
Correct.
He could be back week 8.
Correct. And I think that's my point, is that even if he comes back, Jerome Ford is going to be relevant. He's going to retain some type of a role. We saw it when Nick Chubb was there with Kareem Hunt. I don't think it's just going to be the Nick Chubb show. He's older. He's got 2 catastrophic injuries. PFF grades the Browns offensive line as the number 4 offensive line in the NFL. I don't believe in Deshaun Watson. I never have. Aside from the morality piece, I have not seen the player in Cleveland that we saw in Houston. No one has. So until I see that, I don't buy in on Watson. He's not a guy that I want on my teams. I believe they're going to run the ball. I think at the end of the first 4 weeks, Jerome Ford is probably going to be, if you have him, I think you're going to get some trade offers. And if you really do want to, if you're buying the Nick Chubb, or what, we'll see what the news is like, right? Maybe it's Nick Chubb to the moon after week 4 and he is healthy and he's going to come back in week 5. You could sell Ford at that point. So I love the value of Jerome Ford in the 10th, 11th round. As I say that, I just passed on him in our league, but the next guy I'm going to talk about is actually the guy that I took over him. So I feel good about it. But yeah, I'm in on Jerome Ford at his draft cost as a value. I think he's going to hold his value longer than the first 4 weeks of the season. And look, the other piece that I want people to remember is this. It's a 15-week fantasy season. If Jerome Ford helps you get through that first month with a 3-1 record and you're looking like a playoff team, that's exactly what you need. You need a guy that's going to help you get started quickly, because we know injuries happen. We know bye weeks happen depending on the structure of your team. You just don't know what week 6 through 8 is going to look like. I want to get through that first part, that first month, with hopefully his best 4-0 record. But I think Jerome Ford is going to help people score touchdowns and put some points on the board to help them win weeks early on and set them up to hopefully get into the playoffs.
Like what you said there a lot, specifically like early season and how that translates into late season.
Yeah.
At least the way I think me and you play full PPR, especially, 3 wide receiver in particular, but even if it's 2 with 2 flexes, I want a hero RB, but I'm spending half my bench just to solve RB2. Right. I'm not trying to solve flex. I'm trying to solve RB2 because I want all my flexes to be wide receivers. And a championship winning team, unless, you get lucky and you pick up, Nick Chubb was a waiver wire league winner back in the day. You can actually go back that far. Right. I think
or if you go get Kyron Williams, who was a waiver wire, he was a waiver wire guy potentially even last year in certain leagues because of the injury. So
yeah, for sure. So I think Ford is that type of guy where does he have the potential to lose value by week 14, 15? Sure. 1, he doesn't have to, which is why we like him, because they have a week 10 bye. I mean, Chubb could be back around then. It could be a minute, right? Well, week 9 or 10. I think it's week 10 though. And even at that, once Chubb's back, I still think Chubb, where does he fit in, right? If it's PPR, Ford's probably still going to be the passing down back. He's going to have a decent role. And again, if it's not the guy, if you're playing fantasy football correctly, you should probably have picked up some bench running backs that are getting involved because of injury and things are happening. And you're going to know that. If Jerome Ford is essentially your RB2, your priority mid-season and managed is going to be, hey, this might not be my starting running back in my playoff run. You'll fix it later, but he's going to win you. With Devon Foreman's injury too, I mean, he could have an elite snap share. I mean, pure volume. And that's going to be pretty nice.
All right. Who you got for us?
All right. Similar vein. I think these guys go pretty similar in ADP. We'll see if chat can figure it out. This player goes a little bit earlier. RB 33 currently on Sleeper. 96 overall. Set to be a full workhorse. That's something they definitely have in common. This is my other version of your player where they're going to have a ridiculous snap share and a ridiculous workhorse role. He's reunited with his old coach, a coach I like, and Brian Daboll. It's Devin Singletary. Now, that O-line looks atrocious. I think the team is going to be pretty bad. I think it's going to be kind of a tire fire. I think there's a limit to how bad they can be with Daboll. Like, I like Daboll. But here's the thing. Tyrone Tracy is a converted wide receiver. This is a dynasty dart throw, not someone that I think is really going to get in Devin Singletary's way all too often. I think he's going to have some gadget roles here and there, some design stuff for him where I think he can be good too. But the bread and butter of this team is going to be Devin Singletary. Another reason why I like him too is he's a back that wins through vision. I think he showed that in Houston quite a bit, where he just saw the field a little bit more. That's why he was decent in Buffalo. He wasn't overly talented, but he knows what he's capable of, and he can just get it done. I don't see this as a ridiculous, like compared to Ford, I think has an actual ceiling to him. I think Singletary's it's more of a floor play than the other ways, but he's also a pretty competent pass catcher, and I think in that offense with limited weapons and potentially bad O-line, I think he could be a relatively decent safety valve for Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
Neighbors is also absolutely freaking ridiculous. And I think there's a world where they're not a complete tire fire. Just bad, but not like the Saints bad. And so I oftentimes like taking workhorse running backs on teams that we think are going to be the actual worst in the NFL. But there's a chance maybe they don't have to. He has a lot of ways to touch the ball. He goes ridiculously late. I think there's a theme to this where the wide receivers that go just above him in rounds 7 and 8, I still love. It's where a lot of the rookies go. Sure, there's a tier up that you could go to at running back. I just prefer the wide receivers there, and I'm going to keep taking them. And I'm forced into situations like this, and I would take Devin Singletary. Compare him to like a Zamir White, okay? Zamir White goes before him. Zamir is on a bad team, but he doesn't catch any passes. So he's going to be very game script dependent, and I think he's going to have an incredibly low floor, where Singletary has a much higher floor and can give you a stabilizing RB2 situation. So
it goes 3 rounds earlier, Zamir White, 2 to 3 rounds, depending on your league.
Yeah, but not sexy, but he'll get it done for you. I'm a fan.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been rising on him a little bit lately because of exactly what you just laid out. Look, the Giants were 6-11 last year. I think they're going to be about that same record this year, within a game or two on either side. I would err more on the side of 5 and 12 than 6-11 or 7 and 10. But there's nobody there, and there's no other receivers there, and the tight end is a rookie. I mean, Theo Johnson's probably going to be the starter. He's getting all the reps with the ones. So, yeah, again, we're talking about values. We're not talking about league winners. We didn't put Devin Singletary in the league winners show. We're talking about guys that you can get that can give you useful weeks well below their ADP and should outperform their ADP. And that's what you're looking for in a value pick. So, I mentioned I passed on Jerome Ford, Kendall, in our league that we've got slow drafting right now. I passed on him for the player I'm going to talk about next. ADP 110, RB 39 off the board. So again, 10th, 11th round. He's actually going right next to Jerome Ford. They're basically back to back. He should be the starter on his team. He had 810 yards last year, and he actually caught, I didn't know this, he caught 180 receiving yards. So not great, but like if it gets you an extra 1 to 2 points a week, that's great. That's Gus Edwards. And to me, what I'm drafting Gus Edwards for is what I believe the Chargers signed him to do, which is score touchdowns. And Gus had 13 rushing touchdowns last season. So we've talked about this ad nauseum. As much as we want to talk about, the Chargers aren't going to ever throw the ball. They're just going to run. We know they can't. Their defense is bad. They're going to be chasing games. Their offensive line, Joe Alt's a rookie. Their offensive line's middle of the table, still not great. They don't have a wide receiver that demands double coverage. They don't have an alpha who's going to take and be a field stretcher. So they have some guys that we think are going to be okay. I know we're going to talk about, some of the guys later. And as we get to legit or bullshit tonight, teaser, we've got some stuff in there with some of these players. But I just don't believe in J.K. Dobbins. And we talked, I think you and I, we talk all the time, so it's hard to remember when we had these conversations, but
that's a fair point there.
But look, Kamani Vidal to me, it just is small school, doesn't have the profile. He's more of a dynasty dart throw. Could he develop into something? Sure. We know guys are going to emerge. Vidal could have some relevance over 1 or 2 weeks. Gus could get hurt. Dobbins clearly could get hurt. So Vidal could end up being the guy. But again, everything we talk about presumes health. If Herbert can be efficient this season, and that's what we expect from him, and use Palmer and McConkey and the whatever version of Quentin Johnston shows up to just continuously move the chains and get into the red zone, I think that's where Gus has some real value. So to me, the key to Gus Edwards is you are getting a starting running back with the goal line work in the 10th round. So if you go, Kendall, like you said, hero RB, and you go grab Breece Hall in the first round at the turn, the 1-2 turn, and then you load up at wide receiver, you take a Mark Andrews, you can absolutely put Gus Edwards in your RB2 spot, or put him and Jerome Ford and Devin Singletary and the player we'll talk about next in kind of a player pool and stream your RB2 from your own bench the way that we would in our dynasty rosters. So I like Gus as my RB3 more than my RB2. So that way with bye weeks, there's some stuff there because I think there's other players with higher ceilings. But that touchdown upside to me is the reason I think Gus is going to be a viable value player here below his ADP this season. Or excuse me, above where his ADP is right now.
Could not agree more. Now, Phil got his stuff in the show doc before I did because I was definitely going to be taking the Gus Bus.
Yeah, that was kind of easy.
Exact reasons. I went with like Gus Bus Light and Devin Singletary. Here's my if then, okay? Gus Bus is the RB1. Change the RB2's name from J.K. Dobbins to Samaje Perine.
Yeah.
Where's you go in your rankings? Guys, it's the same thing.
Yep.
Right? It's just we all saw J.K. Dobbins. We liked him. We want to believe it. And because maybe we can take J.K. like around later and have it all and all that stuff, that's the reason his ADP is a little bit depressed. The team has been all doom and gloom. There's just so much negative stuff depressing the ADP of a workhorse running back that is less affected by all that nonsense. So just draft him in profit.
Draft in profit. Let's finish up running backs with one more you got. And then I think JK Alex had a question in the chat that I'm not ignoring. I'm going to wrap the running back segment with his question prior to transitioning to the old pass catchers there.
All right, Chad, get the guessing years out. This year, if you've watched any of our shows, I have been talking ad nauseum about avoiding the RB dead zone this year. Now, the RB dead zone, it's a little bit later. It's been pushed down a little bit. So it's less terrible than it used to be the last couple of years. We're getting better as a fantasy community at getting this stuff right. But I'm still kind of off of it because of the picks that me and Phil have already been talking about, which I think are similar enough in production to what you get in the dead zone. That being said, there's always an exception to the rule. This player, I'm going to go ahead and make an exception. There's 2 players in the dead zone I'll make an exception for, but this one I'm getting a little more steamed up. ADP is RB19, which, as I'm saying, it sounds ridiculous. Goes 55 overall, okay? And when his starting quarterback is healthy, I've never seen him not be a top 12 running back, ever. It's our boy James Conner. Let's get it, man. Oh, remember the glory days of Pittsburgh Steelers, James Conner? If you won the lottery and you sniped the Le'Veon Bell owner and got in there. Love me some James Conner. Love the kid. One of the most complete all-around backs in the NFL, can do a little bit of everything. And this Arizona Cardinals offense is, I'm getting kind of steamed up. I think everyone's getting steamed up about it. But I think Connor's kind of the forgotten guy in the room where it's he stands to profit a ton, right? So, and again, whenever Kyler's healthy in a worse offense than they are this year, he's always been an RB1. Now, he is a little bit older, so I get that. There's always risk when it comes to these sorts of things, but I did see him finish at 28.5, last year. I saw him finish on an absolute tear. He was putting up top 5 RB weeks, absolutely crushing it at the end of last year. This is definitely the best offense they've had. You had Marv, you've got a healthy Kyler. I think the coaching staff is generally an upgrade, particularly to how they use the running back position, since I didn't love what Cliff had done in the past, which just run it down the middle and pretty much ruin everything. So with these other weapons, I think it helps them quite a bit with Trey McBride and Marv being there. I think it just gives them a more well-rounded picture. Now, I like Trey Benson. No one likes him more than Phil, right? That's a rule.
That's well documented.
I like Trey Benson. I just don't see Trey Benson eating into his workload from day one. I think it takes a little bit longer. And I also still think he has no risk of losing the goal line work. He's still the goal line guy. He catches a few more passes than I think people give him credit for. He is a pretty complete all-around back. And I think this offense is good enough. In good offenses, you don't really care if they lose a little bit of work. Connor, he is older. He needs to get spelled from time to time. I want him to be efficient at the parts of the field where it's high value touches. I don't want him to be a worse version of ETN where he just gets beat to the ground, is starting to average 3.5 per carry, and it's getting a little bit rough. I don't mind if Trey Benson gets in there because I want the offense ecosystem overall to be good. And I think that to be great, it really should involve a good Trey Benson. David Montgomery, I think, profited from Jahmyr Gibbs being good, and I still think he can be similar to that. But I think Gibbs compared to Trey Benson, right? I think we're all taking the Gibbs side of that coin, which is why I think Connor, if you put Connor and Montgomery on a similar platter, compare the backups, and then you're like, oh, wow, okay, the O-line's not quite what Detroit has, but man, the snap share and the overall volume that James Conner can get this year, he could absolutely finish as an RB1. Wouldn't surprise me, and he would be damn near a league winner if he does.
Yeah. I like it. Very in on James Conner this season. I've been repeatedly, if you listen to the show, if you watch the show, repeatedly saying don't forget about James Conner and Raheem Mostert and their offenses because they are still the ones. And yes, we want the new hotness with Achane and, Benson and Gibbs. Gibbs obviously was last year, but don't forget about those guys. So JK Alex told you we get to your question here. Kyren as RB2. Should I be worried of overreacting with the punt return news, 12-man PPR? My simple answer is no. He's McVay's guy. He's McVay's guy until he's not. I agree that Corum's going to have a role, but Sean McVay's historically used one running back. I think Corum will be there to spell Kyren at times, similar to what you just said about Connor, not because of Kyren's age, but because of his health and injury history. I'm not terribly worried about it. What, do you have a different take on that, or
not at all?
Yeah,
not at all. When there's other coaches that would look at special teams as the doghouse, McVay is a younger new school coach. That's just not how he thinks. He's pro player. I don't know Kyren personally, but everyone I've spoken to, former Notre Dame students, I live pretty close to Notre Dame. They speak very highly of him. High character guy. It wouldn't surprise me if it was Kyren's idea.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't think
Who
about
says
that.
It was McVay's idea? Who said Kyren wasn't like,
yeah,
dude, I could run this, man. Like, hey, give me a couple shots at this. And maybe he crushed at it in practice on some random, like, hey, I got this. And McVay's like, shoot, dude. I mean, you're better than everyone else at it. That could be a narrative. If that was the narrative, if he just said slightly different words to it, wouldn't his ADP go up?
I think so. I mean, and look, if you're in one of those leagues where they give, there's all kinds of scoring, we talk about half and full PPR, but like when you get into some of these leagues that have bonuses and kick return yards, I mean, like Scott Fishbowl's got kick return yards this year. So I think it's an interesting rule change. I think you're going to see a lot of experimentation with different coaches to just try. At the end of the day, what do coaches really want to do? They want to get the ball in their playmakers' hands. If you can put I understand the additional risk of injury. I get it. But if you could put the ball into your best player's hands with a different setup for the way that this is a return, where technically you really only have to, break through two lines now because the spacing of the guys, it's really interesting. We'll see what happens. Rafi had a question too, kind of had the RB Denzo shifted the last few years with the shift to a more common wide receiver heavy build rather than the previous double RB starts? I think the answer is yes. I think you see a lot of leagues starting at 3 wide receivers. Kendall, you and I play in a lot of 3 wide receiver leagues. And I think you're also seeing, you heard Kendall say it a couple minutes ago, and you'll hear me reiterate it right now. I want wide receivers in my flex position, especially in full PPR leagues and even in half. So to me, I think you're really looking at a lot more common hero RB builds, or, going and grabbing a stable of 4 or 5 guys that you feel comfortable kind of rotating through and really loading up on those heavy wide receivers.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think there's 3 factors that all correlate together that has resulted in this, right? Yeah. One is the emergence of best ball on Underdog. Get that logo up there. Our boys over there. Yep. That's become not just a fun thing, but it's become very common and kind of hype. Everyone's into it. It's super fun. Who doesn't want to win $1 million? Hard to do that at $50 buy-in draft. So when you take the emergence of best ball, plus you take the emergence of these 3 wide receiver full PPR leagues. And then the third one is just as a fantasy community. I think the industry has grown. There are better, sharper analysts. And me and Phil are in it now, right? So clearly better and sharper. You know what I'm saying?
And better looking.
Well, that for you, maybe not for me, man.
It's the beards.
I'll give you that. But when you combine the 3 together, right? If you started getting really big into best ball and try to be profitable with it, you definitely learned that the optimal strategy, the winning, if you want to win top money, it was finding replaceable RB production later and really drafting the elite, more predictable elite wide receiver production, right? It wasn't anti-running back. It was just you can replace it a little bit more easily in terms of role. And people got better at doing zero and hero RB builds. That started to slowly translate over into managed leagues. And I think that has what's created that ADP being a little bit down. Now, the ADP on running backs was actually lower earlier on in the season. They started to creep back up as people fall into their old habits of, but I got to get that running back. So you see people still want to. It's just the ADP several months ago got pushed back. It started later, and so it didn't rise quite as high. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yep. It's the fear, man, as you're exactly right. It's like the old school mentality, but if I don't do this, then I'm screwed. I will never be able to do this and I'll lose the league. You don't win your league at the draft.
Dude, doing like 400 best ball drafts prepares you for, like, just take a breath. The zero and hero RB builds, it's fine. Wait, taking your second RB in round 11, but it takes the first 100 best ball drafts to get yourself where you're like, I'm okay. It's all good. Okay, we can do this.
Well, let's move to the wide receiver position. I'm going to go through mine a little bit quicker. I want to get to your takes here.
Cool.
Look, ADP 69, 6th round, wide receiver 30. The reason this player is going later is simply because of the offseason news. The offseason news simply now has gone away. It's the speed man himself, Mr. Rashee Rice.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Patrick Mahomes-led offense. He had 938 yards last year and 7 touchdowns. Hollywood's not practicing. Y'all know, if you listen to the show, if you watch the show, I'm not a Worthy truther, but look, I do think, and I've said this before, I'll say it again right now, I think Worthy is better for real life football than fantasy football. He is going to unlock all kinds of stuff underneath simply because he's going to go over the top and take the top off the defense with that speed. So you're getting Rashee Rice, who is a wide receiver 2 and should finish, in my opinion, inside the top 24 in that offense. You're getting him at a wide receiver 3 price. To me, it's a no-brainer. That's why he's a value. I'm a little surprised, Kendall, and I would just want to kind of flip it to you here real quick as we finish this take on Rashee. I'm a little surprised because we're so close to the season and no news about a suspension has come out, that his ADP has held pretty consistent to where it has been. I would have expected him to rise into that third, 4th round. You can still get him in the end of at the 5-6 turn. What do you think that's going to change this weekend? Do you think if you're doing a draft between Monday and Wednesday night of next week that it'll rise a full round, or do you think you probably are going to be able to target him at the 5-6 turn?
Tough question. I think he's going to rise a little bit. I think with the way it is right now, he was about a tier below where he's getting drafted right now.
He was.
But the tier he's in currently is relatively strong. And I actually think he hasn't risen higher, mostly because people are still comfortable with the guys that go in that range. I mean, if I just throw some names out, like I'm literally just pulling up a draft I'm in right now. It's a slow draft. Rice went right after T. Higgins, Pittman, Dell, Ayuk, Metcalf. It would be hard to take him over that tier of guys, right?
Agreed.
Now in this one, this person reached a little bit in ADP. So I go with the next couple of guys. Cooper, Flowers, Diggs. Now, I do think he properly belongs above those guys. And I think in several drafts currently, according to ADP, he goes after those guys, right? So that's where I think the reaching makes sense. Taking him over Pickens, over Christian Kirk, certainly over all the Green Bay guys. I think that makes sense. He was closer to that tier of Watson, Kirk, Diggs, Flowers. I think he firmly belongs above that, but according to ADP, he's kind of in that mix.
Yeah,
I just can't see him rising above like T. Higgins.
Yeah, I agree. Well, especially with the Jamar Chase news, or in this case, lack thereof. So yeah, I'm with you. All right, let's flip it and give us a guy that you. I'm just gonna say right off the bat, because I have this show doc up. I 100% agree with both of your values. So let's start with one of them and hammer away, my buddy.
All right, we'll go with the slightly earlier guy. I've been a fan for quite some time, all the way back when he was a Pittsburgh Steeler. We're talking about Deontay Johnson, wide receiver, 38, overall 94, according to ADP. So a couple things. Carolina was a tire fire last year. A lot of it was Bryce Young. Dave Canales is in town, so he's probably going to be Patrick Mahomes.
No, he's fixed it.
Honestly,
it's already fixed.
I mean, the guy is an actual magician, right? And I'll tell you this. So I'm a big Colin Cowherd fan. For any of you guys that watch him on the Herd. Now he's gotten a little old Uncle Colin in his day, but one thing that stuck with me years ago was, of all professional sports, coaching matters the most in the NFL. I think I very much believe that. When I look at the past couple of years, my bigger tiebreaker has been better coaching at significant positions, right? Phil Jackson won many championships because he could handle elite talent, right, in a particular way. Dave Canales is just a quarterback whisperer. And if the preseason is any indication, they are well on their way to a pretty solid rebuild. And I think he's going to be magical. He's a quarterback's best friend. He just gets open, right? In the NFL, targets are earned. There are very few wide receivers that get force-fed targets when you're not open. What quarterback wants to throw a pick besides Jameis Winston, okay? And maybe Justin Fields. If you're open, you're going to get the ball thrown to you. If you're consistently winning routes in practice, people are going to take more shots on you. He wins because he gets open, and Bryce needs someone that can get open pretty quickly. I think his best skill set is the way he comes out of his breaks. Cooper Kupp is really good at this too. He just comes out of his breaks very clean and understands, where the ball is and where the quarterback is. So I think he's going to do that pretty adeptly. I love him in PPR particularly because I think he can reach like 120 targets. The big con is in like half PPR, it's a little tougher because I think his touchdown ceiling is really low, but I like him considerably more in PPR where I think he's going to be a target machine. Last year, I faded Tampa Bay entirely. I didn't believe in Baker. I felt really bad for the weapons, and Dave Canales made it work. I just see a rinse and repeat. There's a lot to make me think that's going to be the case. And I think they're the way they have been running the ball last season, and what they're going to do once my rookie that I really, really love is back and healthy. I think they could be pretty reasonable. He's going to be the wide receiver one by far. Yeah. Leggett and Mingo could both bust. They could just be, they could be this weird condensed target share of Deontay and Thielen. Like that's a real thing that could happen. And that's a great thing if it does.
It's a little bit scary, but that's a very real sentence, what you just said. So I like it. I think the pricing on Deontay is still too low. I understand why it's low. It's the Bryce Young stink effect from last year. It kind of smelled. What was the kid in the Charlie Brown? Was the stinky kid? What was that kid's name?
Oh man,
that's how old I am. But y'all know who I'm talking about. There's that kid, Rugrat. Rugrat, is that his name? I don't know. I think I made that up.
that salt and pepper in your beard there.
I did. I don't know. I may have just made that up, but that's kind of what it's like in Carolina, right? It's like the stinky kid kind of following you around at the playground. Anyway, I like Deontay. I've always liked Deontay. I like it. I think it's a good pick. I feel very comfortable as Deontay Johnson is my wide receiver 3. Hopefully my flex play in a PPR league. That would be awesome. So I'm going to jump in one more quickly here. ADP 119 coming off the board as the wide receiver 49, meaning the 10th round. He ran a 4.33 at the combine. It's Brian Thomas Jr. Gabe Davis is inconsistent. We know what Gabe Davis isn't and what he certainly isn't. Christian Kirk's still banged up. He's there, but he's not there. I'm not really sure what's going on with him. Calvin Ridley vacated 22.4% target share. Zay Jones, an additional 11%. This is a player that was completely overshadowed by neighbors at LSU. But look, he still managed 68 for 11, 77, and 17 touchdowns. Who was he catching the ball from? Oh, that's right. Jane Daniels, who was the number 2 overall pick and has already been named the starter for Washington. So it's an NFL quarterback throwing to two NFL wide receivers. 2 of those players were in the top 6 picks. I almost said 5. Top 6 picks. I think he's going to be the wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville. Even if Christian Kirk is there, they can both coexist. Again, I've made myself pretty clear. I'm just not super high on Jacksonville as a team because I think losing Ridley and replacing it with a rookie who takes time to develop and Gabe Davis isn't always the best for Trevor Lawrence. Love Brian Thomas in Dynasty. If we're having this conversation in 2025, next year, I do believe Brian Thomas is probably being talked about as inside the top 5 rounds, maybe 6 rounds of being drafted, assuming he does what we expect him to do. So even this rookie season, I'm taking a flyer on Brian Thomas for a flex play, or hopefully he's on my bench so I can let him sit for a couple weeks and see what he is. But in the 10th round, to have a player who, again, we talking about value, could and probably should be the number 1 wide receiver on his own team, sign me up for that. I'm in on that all day. Take us to the last guy at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, we'll go quick on this one just because he's a little I think there's a player in particular that causes this guy to be a little bit less talked about than he should. But let's go through it. ADP, wide receiver 54. Overall on Sleeper, goes 131 overall, almost free. We're talking last 2 rounds here, last 2-3 rounds for sure. I think this is probably the cheapest potential wide receiver 1 for his team in the entire NFL. It's an ambiguous wide receiver core, but he absolutely could be their wide receiver 1. I don't think they have one, but if they do, it could be him. It's Josh Palmer for the Chargers.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Remember last year in the preseason, he actually got a little bit of hype. He looked really good in the preseason. There was multiple like, oh, wait, should we be taking some shots on Palmer? Like he could be really nice. He could emerge as the wide receiver 3 for that team. And the wide receiver 1 and 2 left. And he's kind of there. Now, Ladd is fantastic. I love Ladd McConkey. Chark's a little bit banged up, and I think Chark was still just going to be in an ancillary piece anyways. QJ would be working concessions somewhere if he wasn't dropping things. Yeah, shots fired, bruh. Seriously, what are we even doing?
That's the best joke I've heard all week. And I've heard a few jokes this week. That's a great one.
I have been drinking. It's going to get
worse.
Hey,
I love it. Let's no. It's going to get better. It's going to get better.
It might get a little bit better. So here's the point. Safe floor because he has chemistry with his existing quarterback. He knows the playbook from the former coaching staff, but he's still familiar with the team, familiar with the quarterback. He's an NFL veteran at this point while still being quite young in an offense that I know will be run heavy as much as the NFL allows it to be. I think their defense is a little bit weak. I think they will still have to have the passing volume will catch up in the second half of games. And I think he's going to be a very big stabilizing force while the players around him still get acclimated to the system. And in Ladd's case, the NFL in general, I don't see like an elite ceiling, but I think he's a really cheap wide receiver 1. He's going to be fantastic. Last year, in a worse situation for him objectively, he still had plenty of games where he would go, 7 for 10 for 80 yards. And if that's his kind of baseline for opportunity, I think he's being a little bit undervalued. You have to take him late because, sure, it's a risk, and there's all these things, right? They could pass less. He could not be the 1 or the 2. He could be the 3. But it's enough of an opportunity where you're taking him, where there's pretty solid upside. He's just the definition of a value for me.
I can't agree more. I mean, look, Josh Palmer is the only player that has been there with Justin Herbert. You just made a great joke. Quentin Johnston, let's just move on, right? And look, people are excited about Ladd. I'm excited about Ladd. You and I both have been spending all kinds of time in the offseason talking about him in Dynasty. He still has yet to catch a football in the NFL. And we both, I think, agree he's not going to be an alpha. He's not going to be a guy that commands 10 to 13 targets a game. He's going to be a great chain mover. He's going to be a great security blanket. He's probably going to get 6 for 78. And if it's the week he scores a touchdown, you're going to be thrilled by that. Right. But to me, Palmer, you're right. Palmer had some hype last year. Someone in that room has to emerge. It has to happen. Otherwise, the Chargers are going to be on the clock at the 101 in next year's draft if nobody does, right? Like they're just going to lose every game. So I'm with you on that one.
Coaching staff's underrated too. I said it before. They got a new coaching staff. It is a mammoth upgrade. They're going to figure out a way to move the chains. It's going to happen. And I think if he was that good with a coaching staff I didn't quite agree with, I think the ceiling's it's going up for him.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. So, all right, let's do. We only have one tight. We have 2 at each position except for tight end because it's hard to find value at the tight end. I want to say this. We put Jake Ferguson on the league winners show because I do believe he's a league winner. I know you do as well.
Yep.
Jake Ferguson is still a value. He's coming off the board as the tight end 10 in the 7th round. Do yourselves a favor. Go get 3 awesome wide receivers. Go get 2 badass running backs. If you want to go early quarterback, awesome. Otherwise, go get an additional wide receiver to throw in your flex and grab Jake Ferguson in the 7th. Okay. My value player, who is not Jake Ferguson, who is my league winner, ADP 130, tight end 15. He's coming off the board in the 11th, 12th. I just took him in a draft yesterday in the 13th round. Who's the wide receiver 2 for Pittsburgh, Kendall?
Wide receiver 2 Pittsburgh. I think that might be their tight end, Phil.
I think it might be. It's Pat Freiermuth. Now, look, Roman Wilson should be that player, but he's still hurt. He's yet to come back to practice. And even if he does come back, we just talked about a player like Nick Chubb. He's not coming off that kind of an injury, but look, it takes time to get reacclimated. Now let's talk about the rest of that wide receiver room after Roman Wilson, who we just said isn't available. Van Jefferson? Nope. Calvin Ridley? Nope. And I didn't know this till I looked it up today. Scotty Miller is there.
Oh, Scotty did land somewhere.
Yeah, so good for Scotty getting a job. Shout out to Mr. and Mrs. Miller. Way to go. Look, it's George Pickens and who, right? Jaylen Warren. I love Jaylen Warren. He's got a hamstring thing. Najee catches passes, but I think Pat Freiermuth, it's not going to be pretty, right? I just saw a graphic on ESPN today on their Instagram page that had the entire drive list with Wilson and Fields under center, and it was basically all punts and a field goal. So it ain't sexy, let me tell you. But let me tell you what you are looking for in the tight end 15. I'm looking for 7 points a week for a free player who can get me that 13th, 14th point if they score the touchdown. And at some point this season, I do believe Justin Fields will become the starter. So that negates some of the goal line passing that we think Russell Wilson will have. But Pat Freiermuth is going to be a good player. He's going to be relevant. I'm not projecting him to finish in the top 5. But outside of the top 5 guys, and this is what the people have to understand about tight ends. Who is the tight end 6 through 10? Because it could be, in my opinion, about 10 different guys that could finish as the tight end 6 through 10. I think the top 5 guys are the top 5 guys. I would put it in it as Ferg now as like that 6th player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ferg, Ingram, maybe 6, 7. I think top 7, Ferg, Ingram, Kittle, kind of. But after that, they're all the same.
But if you told me right now, if you told me 4 months from now at the end of the season that Pat Freiermuth outscored Dalton Schultz and outscored Goddard, I'd say I believe it. Because I think those 2 players I just mentioned are better players, but there's a lot of mouths to feed in Houston, and there's a lot of mouths to feed in Philadelphia. And Pat Freiermuth is going 2 rounds after both of those players. I do think Pat Freiermuth and Cole Kmet, who are going next to each other in ADP, I would take Freiermuth over Kmet. I think Kmet's the better player. I think the Bears have the much better offense. But you've got to compete with DeAndre Swift, who can catch some passes, and then all 3 of those wide receivers before Cole Kmet gets the ball. I think it's a volume thing that ultimately, because there is now, had Brandon Ayuk been traded there, we wouldn't be talking about Pat Freiermuth. But it's George Pickens and freaking nobody else, man. And the reason we love Jake Ferguson as much as we do is because it is CDLs, it is CeeDee Lamb and nobody else. And that's a much better offense in Dallas with a better offensive line, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I know Rafi in the chat here just threw a comment. Conklin, likely Dulcich, late tight end values. I agree. I think Pat Freiermuth's role is safe. There's nobody else. Darnell Washington is a blocker. I think if you just completely ghost the tight end position, you can go get Pat Freiermuth for free with a starting tight end at a value with some upside, and you're going to be pretty happy on the weeks that he catches touchdowns, because that's what you're looking for.
Yeah. I think the big takeaway there is he might legitimately be the second pass catching weapon on the offense. Look, when he came in as a rookie, we liked him a lot. I think he has more upside than I like Conklin and Dulcich in particular. I just think Muth has a little bit more upside and is also significantly more talented than all of them. He was a very talented prospect. Yeah, most tight ends you're looking for 4 for 40, 4 for 50. Yeah. I think he can just do 6 for 70 more often than not if the defense isn't getting it done. Where that's pretty rare at his position. The current starting quarterback who was just named has a history of throwing to the tight end, is clearly comfortable with it, and I think Pickens is best used as a downfield weapon. They're going to have 100%. To do more with him, but they need something in the middle of the field. I think there's a better chance than not he is going to be a more consistent safety valve.
This is the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'll flip it to you. People are drafting in ADP. People are drafting TJ Hawkinson ahead of Pat Freiermuth. They are drafting a player who cannot physically play football for a minimum of 4 weeks. And just like we said about Nick Chubb, it's probably going to be more like week 7, 8, 9 before Hawk's really back. So you're saying that you would rather have a player that you can't even play than a tight end that can actually put points on your team. So TJ Hawkinson to me is a value at tight end if you punt the position because of everything that we just said. And I think it's going to be good for you.
I like it. Mine is as late as it gets because it's about free. It's pretty much free at this point, but that's kind of the point in here in values. Taysom Hill, guys. Taysom Hill still a tight end. Still you can start him. the whole thing we're doing, I can't even say ADP. Overall 150 when he goes undrafted.
Yeah.
Here's why I like him. He has legitimate 15 to 20 point a game upside. It won't happen, back-to-back games, but he's got that single game upside where he can actually make that happen. I think the Saints offense is goofy. I don't know what's going to happen, but they have nobody there. There are no weapons. They have one running back that's healthy, kind of, and he's also old. I think they're still going to do a lot of stuff with Taysom. I really see it happening. I know there's no floor there, but if you're fully punting, like Rafi Baum mentioned, I'll take Taysom over all those guys too, because I think Taysom can actually finish a game with 3 rushes for 15 yards, a touchdown, 2 random passing attempts, probably in the red zone.
One of which might be a touchdown.
And he might catch one too. He has so many ways. What do we want from punt? When you fully punt, tight end, you're looking for your Hunter Henrys who can catch a touchdown. Well, this is a guy who can catch a touchdown, rush a touchdown, and throw for a touchdown. Sometimes he's going to get you 2 points, which, oh my God, 2 points versus the 5 you were going to get from the other waiver wire guy, right? But the point is you're not finding a 15-point, tight end in for free. And you do get that with Taysom Hill. In particular, if you're in a format where you have 7 bench spots, or maybe you have 6 bench spots, but you have like 2 IRs, and maybe you drafted Brooks, right? Maybe you got a super late, maybe you fully punted, and you're like, oh,
or
I can get it.
Or Hawkinson.
Exactly. If you get an 11th round Hawkinson, double tap, take Taysom, give yourself some week winning upside, and then you can, slowly stabilize into it. In my opinion, if you have enough bench spots for it, I prefer 7, 6, and I'll utilize the IR so it kind of makes 7. If you go with you just double tap it really late and hope to hit on 1, and then you're already going to waiver it anyways because you're going to pick up the hot thing at running back. You can double tap, Sinnott, and Taysom late. You can do things along that nature, and he's the guy I'm probably starting for sure. So.
Dennis Allen just texted me and said he's got a play called Bourbon Street where Taysom Hill takes the snap, throws it up to himself, catches it, so he gets the full PPR point, fumbles it, picks it up, and then runs it in for a rushing touchdown. He calls that Bourbon Street. So I think it's I think the challenge with Taysom Hill is the same that has always been with Taysom Hill. On the weeks that he wins you the week, he'll get you 30 points because he will have 2 rushing touchdowns and maybe a passing touchdown and 78 yards. On the weeks that he burns you, he gets you 0. So I love what you're saying because it's free, right? I think it's a great strategy if you're going to go get Hawkinson, and that's going to be your tight end later in the year. Then if you completely punt it, you can get Taysom. So yeah, I like it. I think he's just a volatile player. So let's do some higher and lower before we get into our favorite segment as we wrap the show. Ready?
Always.
Jerome Ford scored 9 total touchdowns last year. Nick Chubb is on IR for at least the first 4 weeks of the season, if not longer, as he gets ramped back up. Jerome Ford will score over under 9.5 total touchdowns this season.
Under.
Okay.
But that's because Joe Flacco's not their quarterback. You make Joe Flacco their quarterback, I take the under.
He's double digits, buddy. Give me Flacco all day. Pat Freiermuth is the de facto wide receiver 2 in Pittsburgh. The Muth's career high is 732 receiving yards. Pat Freiermuth will go over under 650 receiving yards this season.
I had no idea you put this in the show, Doc. I don't know that you know this, but I have several utility bills on this exact bet. We're smashing the over on this. This is ridiculous.
Darn. By the way, Kyler Murray still plus 3,000 for comeback player of the year. It's stupid. Joe Burrow's plus 250, which makes me feel like I need to actually put. Oh yeah, sorry. If you guys are in the chat, there we go. Get in that chat. There we go. Get in on these. This is for everybody. Plus 3,000 still. So for those that aren't attuned to betting, if you bet $100 on Kyler Murray to win comeback player of the year and he does, you win $3,000, $2,900 technically because you're $100 bet. But please go bet Kyler Murray because I've already put that line in, so I don't care if the line comes down now. So go bet it up. Go bet it up as much as you want. Darnell,
which one of our in-season shows? Just a quick little bit. Which one of our in-season shows are going to cover like the sports betting side of things? Because I think me and you are going to do quite a bit of that in season.
Yeah. I don't know yet. I don't know.
Get in the DMs, guys. If you're into if you really like doing prop betting on players,
We're gonna have some content for you.
Shoot us some messages on Sleeper. We're probably going to cover it several times. We have content literally 7 days a week with Get Right. But I would imagine me and Phil are pretty big into that space. We'll be doing lots and lots of that. So stay tuned.
This is a player that I almost put in the values section. I didn't because I think it's a little thin, but I put him in higher and lower because I didn't get to talk about him tonight. Darnell Mooney has career finishes of wide receiver 50, 23, 71, 83. But he is the clear wide receiver 2 in Atlanta, and he is being drafted as the wide receiver 64. Darnell Mooney will finish over under wide receiver 50 this season.
Ooh, that's an easy over for me. It's one of the easiest overs. He's more of a best ball player for me. I like him more in leagues where you just start more positional players where you need some volatility, right? If it's like a standard like 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 1 flex, like old school league, that's where I like Mooney a lot less. But in 3 wide receiver, 2 flex, where you're looking for the Moonies and the Shaheeds of the world, give me Mooney all day in a significantly improved offense. He's like Juju was never a good wide receiver 1, but was an elite wide receiver 2. I think that's the case with Mooney. He's going really underrated. He could have easily been slotted into our values if he didn't already be like more of a best ball target for me.
I mean, look, Rafi just put in the chat, is he really the number 2 with Bijan and Pitts? He's the wide receiver 2. So no, he's not the number 2 target earner in this team. But here's my thing. I'm going to say this really quickly. Do you let's say that one of those players, not Bijan, let's say London or Pitts misses time, significant time. Do you think there is a path for Darnell Mooney to finish inside the top 36? Do you think he can be a wide receiver 3?
Oh, I definitely think so. It's because Kirk Cousins is a very elite quarterback. Well, he's a good quarterback. I'm not going to use the word elite for Kirk Cousins. I shouldn't just throw that out willy-nilly, but Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. He's a veteran. He knows how to beat defenses. I think older quarterbacks that go to new teams have the least loyalty to like the de facto wide receiver 1 or this good player. They throw to who's open and they know how to read defenses better than rookies. He's been doing this a long time. He's underrated. I think he's going to find the open guy. And I think if you're trying to shut down all the aforementioned options, this is where the hidden guy who's secretly talented, like the Juju case, this is where they get to eat. Now, if you have an inexperienced quarterback, this is where I throw him away. I mean, if you give me bad quarterback play, I think Mooney is so off my board fast. It's because Kirk Cousins knows how to play football that I think Mooney is going to have some very, very, very good games. And to your point, the wide receiver 2, that means he never leaves the field.
Correct. That's the point. I do not draft Darnell Mooney in a redraft league. Please don't do it, especially if you have a normal size 5-man, 6-man bench. If you have one of those larger benches, take a shot and see what it looks like the first 2 or 3 weeks. Because if an injury occurs, he will be the number 1 waiver wire pickup. And let's not make this the Darnell Mooney variety hour, but Mooney's just like, he's just a forgotten man. But I was like, he's kind of in a weird way. I think he could be relevant. All right, last one. Then we get into legit or bullshit. Will Levis is being projected for roughly 3,800 yards in his first full season as a starter. He threw for 1808 in 8 games last year. In 2024, Will Levis will throw for over under 3,875.
Jeez, Vegas has him at 3,800.
I looked up like 9 different reputable people who do projections. All of them had 30.
Calvin Ridley was my league winner, so this makes me feel real good.
I know.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
And look,
can he be Jameis Winston?
And I said it earlier in the show. Cincinnati last year threw it the second most in the entire league. And that's Brian Callahan, who's now the head coach.
Wow.
And
he looked good in the preseason.
Spears and Pollard are not Derrick Henry. They're not barreling anybody. You know what I mean? They're not pounding the rock through the middle of the offensive line, just moving people out of the way.
Honestly, you know what?
Oh, Ralphie, look, Ralphie.
Everyone
catches the ball on offense. Yes, Ralphie's point. I'm
taking the over on that one.
I think I am. I know it's my own thing, but I think I'm going to take the over.
They have 2 elite deep ball route running, get that ball guys. Like, I think he should do like a 20-step drop and just like make it happen.
But
he's got a check down now, you know?
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't think Pollard and Spears are like run it between the tackles, pound the rock kind of guys. Like they're get him out in open space. Like Tony Pollard made his name because Zeke was the between the tackles guy, and Pollard was more of the, gadget guy, get him in space, flip him the rock and let him go. So, all right.
Maybe it's Jameis 2.0,
Maybe
30 and 30.
Maybe with some mayonnaise. They'll give him extra space because he's got that mayonnaise cologne. They'll give him, an extra yard to work his magic in the pocket there. So that can't smell good. There's no way that can smell good. Who buys that? Who buys mayonnaise scented cologne? Never mind. I don't even want to go
Clearly,
there.
you've never been to Wisconsin.
No, I have been to Wisconsin. I think there it's all cheesy cologne. That ain't mayonnaise, brother. Here we go. All right, you ready? Folks in the chat, fire emoji if you think it's legit. As I tell my daughter, chocolate ice cream emoji if you think it's bullshit. Jared Goff will have a higher fantasy finish than Brock Purdy.
Sold. Yeah, I'm in there.
Legit. Okay, let's throw some emojis in the chat. Goff, higher fantasy finish than Purdy. I'd love to know what the chat thinks on that one. I'm going to tell you this one. I think we did it. I didn't go back and look at the old show doc. So if we did this one, I apologize. It's my fault. But Jaden Daniels will have more rushing yards than Austin Eckler.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I think we did this one. Like when I first made this segment up. So, okay. All right. James Conner will score more rushing touchdowns than DeAndre Swift.
Oh, easy. For sure, he's going to lap them.
Yeah, these first three are pretty easy. Brian Thomas Jr., BTJ, will have more receiving yards than Christian Kirk. Yeah, now I made them kind of easy to hard tonight, I think, as I wrote these out.
I'm going to qualify this. It's a no, but I think Christian Kirk actually has the Gabe Davis role he's always been a pretty big A-dot guy, and I think BTJ is actually going to start eating a little bit as like a power slot where he's going to find a way to get open shorter yardage, being a more physical presence, and I think Kirk still has the high A-dot, and because of that, finishes with more yards, but it's close.
Wicked Pompano just put a fire and a legit bullshit in there. You can't do both, brother. You got to pick a side, man. All right, you ready? Now they get harder.
All right.
Terry McLaurin
Mm-hmm.
will finish inside the top 15.
Top 15 wide receivers?
Yes.
Oh, no, I don't buy it. I don't see the passing yards path to getting there. I'm too big on Jaden being a mediocre passer, but a huge rushing person. His touchdown ceiling might be there, but I don't see him getting the yards to get into the top 15. Even if he did, that's an outlier.
Yeah. So for those that are new, or if there's anyone that's new to the show, this segment, sometimes it's just me making up stuff that I want to know, like what crowdsource, and sometimes it's going through reactions to recent news and seeing like what's the temperature, because obviously Jahan Dotson got traded away. Luke McCaffrey's not made a great impression. I've seen De'Ami Brown get picked up off the waiver wire in like every single one of my leagues. Noah Brown getting picked. You know what I mean? It's like, ugh, like have fun. Like it's Dynasty. Obviously you're not doing that in redraft, right? In Dynasty leagues, it's like, ugh, that's garbage. I don't want that. All right, you ready?
Yes,
Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers will have more combined fantasy points than Kyle Pitts and Drake London.
Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, Pitts in London.
So basically the tight end and the wide receiver won for
We're going yards or fantasy points?
Fantasy points. Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers will have more combined fantasy points than Kyle Pitts and Drake London.
Oh, interesting. I'm kind of out on Pitts, but Andrews, my goodness, I think Andrews is my tight end 2 right now. Elite touchdown ceiling. How much is Drake London a difference maker over Zay Flowers? Oh my God, that's a rough one. I'm kind of in on the Zay Andrews. I'm going to give it to Zay and Andrews by a hair.
Yeah. Okay. Who's your tight end 1? Andrews is your 2? Do you have Laporta? You have Kelsey. Yeah. Okay.
I got Laporta's 3.
I have
Laporta's touchdowns go back to 6 or 7, and his target share stays the same, if not goes down. Yeah.
Yeah. I have Andrews as my tight end 1. Okay. All right. You ready? Brandon Ayuk and newly paid the richest man, and not the richest man, but the happiest man in San Francisco today. Brandon Ayuk. Today was a big day for San Francisco, by the way, because Steph got paid on a 1 year, $62 million. Do you see that stat that Steph's 1 year deal was more than the A's payroll?
Yep.
That was crazy.
That was absolutely
That was
insane.
nuts. I mean, I don't like baseball, but good Lord, man. All right. Yeah. Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel will have more receiving touchdowns than Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua.
Nope.
No, you're taking the Rams pass catchers for receiving touchdowns.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. Christian McCaffrey, and I'm big on McCaffrey and Kittle in particular, I think is going to eat in the touchdown department, and McCaffrey is too. And Puka and Kupp are going to go nuclear this year.
Yeah.
Give me Puka and Kupp.
Yeah, that one. I don't normally answer these, obviously, because I write them, but I take the Rams because there's just less there. So yeah. Jake Ferguson, league winner. This one's spicy.
Okay.
Jake Ferguson will have more receptions than Trey McBride.
No.
Trey McBride will have more. Okay.
Dak likes him in the red zone, but Dak also likes to be a hero in the middle of the field, and Ferguson doesn't feel fun in the middle of the field. Zach, where tiny little Kyler needs someone to help him in the middle of the field, short yardage situation. I think Trey McBride is a big boon in that particular area. So that's why I'm giving the receptions to Trey McBride. I would not be surprised if Ferg beat him in touchdowns, though.
Yeah, the reason I picked receptions for this one and not touchdowns was because there is no one else in Dallas, and people like Michael Wilson. I mean, I don't have Michael Wilson in redraft, but I have Michael Wilson in a couple dynasty leagues, and I'm decently excited to feel like, hey, I've got a bye week and I have someone that if I really need, I could possibly look at, throwing into my flex spot. So George Pickens, the only man in town. George Pickens will finish as a wide receiver 3. So he will finish between 25 and 36 and 12 team, and we'll go there because I think most people are in 12 team. So George Pickens will finish as a wide receiver 3.
You're taking the 3 or lower, and I'm taking a higher. Is that the play here?
No, I'm saying the line is George Pickens will finish as a wide receiver 3. Legit, that's where he's going to finish, or bullshit? He's definitely going to finish, I guess, better or lower than it, but better, obviously, in this case.
I think he finishes at least there. I think there's a chance he finishes. He's knocking on wide receiver 2.
You think so? With those quarterbacks, you think so? Okay.
I think so.
He's never done it. That's why I picked the line of wide receiver 3, because he never finishes wide receiver 2. That's only 2 years in the league.
I feel like no one's baking. Just real quick, I'm not going to go on it for like a long tangent here, but why isn't George Pickens allowed to grow and get better? Like I don't. He's only 23. I don't understand why is every rookie allowed to like come into the NFL not knowing what they're doing and they're supposed to evolve, but Pickens, who already has more experience and who has had pretty terrible luck when it comes to all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
I think he can get better. I never thought he was the most nuanced route runner. He can definitely get better at that, but he still can make an amazing contested catch. He's got the moon ball himself throwing in the ball. I see a lot of growth. He might not make it there, but I think he's easily better than like Terry McLaurin this year. I
don't think he's a 1. I think he needs someone opposite him.
He's got Muth, right?
Well, a real receiver. Yeah, he needs like a real he needs to have an Amari Cooper when CeeDee Lamb came in. I'm not saying that Pickens is CeeDee Lamb. That's not what I'm saying. But my point is like you had someone that was really good that commanded defenses to pay attention to, and CeeDee's obviously incredibly talented, but he needs somebody that is going to actually take defense's attention away to actually get.
At least unlike the Juju example, though, the skill he's good at is crazy, acrobatic. Right. Contested, like I am better at catching this football than you ever will be, cornerback. So if he's got to get double covered or get thrown into some weird coverage, that's what he's good at. That's what he can excel at.
Next year, Kendall, when the Texans dump Steph Diggs and he signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's going to help George Pickens immensely.
Oh heck yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Or if Keenan Allen ends up there.
When Keenan Allen goes, when one of these guys gets dumped because they're on a 1-year contract and they're old, and Steph Diggs is just a grumpy cat anyway, so I think Houston's going to be like, yo, you don't fit our vibe. We're all young and like trying to win, and you're just trying to get.
You can go play slot for him. That'd be great. He already kind of likes it in the slot. Yeah,
Steph Diggs is going to be a great Pittsburgh Steeler. He's going to be great. Cortland Sutton, the only man in town. Cortland Sutton will not have. Good job, Phil. Double negative in your own sentence, dude. Cortland Sutton will not have 800 receiving yards this season.
Oh yeah. I'm with that's legit. He won't have the yardage.
Agreed. Yep. Joe Mixon will end his streak of 3 consecutive RB1 seasons.
Yes.
So you think he's going to finish 13 or lower?
Yeah, absolutely.
Too.
There's too many mouths in that room, and my God, I mean, I don't know how it's possible, but I know he doesn't have much of a leg, but he's doing his best J.K. Dobbins impression. Like, he is. Akers does not look. You see the 6 spin moves in a row in the preseason. What the hell?
I went to the waiver wire in all my dynasty leagues, and he was there, and I was like, but my question was, who am I dropping? Like I picked him up in one league because I had somebody, whatever, it was like a ghost.
Flip the game back on you, him or Jordan Mason.
Let's get to that in 1 second. All right. Did you look at the show doc?
No,
okay.
I'm scrolled up to the quarterback section, man. Okay. I don't cheat at this game.
All right. Well, I'm going to cheat and give. This was supposed to be the second to last one, but since you just said his name, Jordan Mason will have more rushing yards than Justice Hill.
More rushing yards than Justice Hill. Ooh.
I wanted to find 2 RBs that are clearly not going to be the guys with CMC and Derrick Henry there. So Jordan Mason.
Give me Jordan Mason, dude. Justice Hill, I do think is a pretty decent factor in the passing game, but he ain't gonna rush the ball very often. Yeah, give me some Jordan Mason. How many times did Elijah Mitchell get on the field in the fourth quarter because the games were in hand? That could be a lot of Mason. Maybe they mix in Garendo towards the second half.
That just answered your question. I would take Mason over Akers. It's a better offense.
Akers, though.
I'll be honest, the answer is neither of them. But
if Mixon ain't it, is Akers the starting running back? Is he the 1A in that offense next year?
I've never done this one before, so I've never done team one. I always do individuals. So we're going to do team one.
Okay.
The Tennessee Titans will make the playoffs as a wild card team.
Oh, brother. What's their defense projected at? I haven't done a lot of stats on that.
Not great.
Not great. If their defense is not great, I can't give it to them.
Middle of the pack, but
I don't love their division, but
that's why I picked. I was like, okay, I think we'd all agree. Everything again presumes health, but I think we'd all agree that the Texans are winning that division. They've got a great defense, and we love that offense, right? Will Anderson was just defensive player of the year or rookie of the year. Like, that's happened for sure. Ralphie, Colts fan, yeah. I have it. Texans, Colts, Jaguars, Titans, but I'm not big on the Jags. So I could easily see, if the Jaguars go to Tennessee and lose in Nashville, that could be the difference between third and fourth place.
Man, new head coach, though. No, you don't make the playoffs with the new head coach in Tennessee.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I want to see, because people are rising on those Titans, man. They like them. All right. This one's gross, but also fun. The new hotness in Kansas City, Samaje Perine, will have more fantasy points than the new hotness in Big D, Dalvin Cook.
Wow. Ooh, interesting.
Samaje Perine will have more fantasy points than Dalvin Cook.
Yes, he will. Because I think Dalvin Cook stays in the practice squad, and Khalil Herbert ends up being the RB1 for Dallas. Great. Give it time.
Do you think I asked somebody this in it's Victorious. I don't think he's here tonight. Do you think Samaje is the 2 behind Pacheco? Do you think he's ahead of Clyde?
See, Clyde is having some major mental health issues. People are saying he's clearly had some clinical work done.
Yeah,
he's going through some shit. I hope he's okay, but I don't think he's really the 2 anymore.
Yeah, I don't either. Okay. Well, and everybody was, all those people in best ball that were trying to, I saw Deneric Prince go in the 13th round of a 18-round best ball draft. And I was like, brother, even if he is the 2 and not in the 13th round, what are you doing? Anyway, thanks for, guess I'm only playing against 10 people in that league because he had some other wonky picks. I was like, oh God.
Just don't get injured. You got it.
Here we go. I saved this one for last because it was you.
Oh,
Rome Odunze.
Over, whatever it is.
Well, Rome Odunze will have more receiving touchdowns than Stephon Diggs.
Oh, yeah, dude, pencil them in.
Really?
Yeah, I would bet that.
Okay. Pencil, not pen.
Yeah.
Pencil, not pen.
No, pen. Permanent freaking
Permanent
marker.
ink.
Yeah, let's
Tattoo.
go.
Right there. Boom. Tattoo on the
I
chest.
call it right now. Put Rome down for 7 or 8.
Oh, and again, everything presumes health. So I was like, okay, who are the big?
Give Diggs 5 or 6. Give Rome 7 or 8. I got him. I mean, they're like, he's not lapping him, but yeah, he's going to be a problem in the red zone, an actual problem. And I don't think Diggs is going to be a problem in the red zone. They got a million other options, and Diggs might not see the field in 2 wide receiver sets sometimes. I'm not kidding.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. I was like, I was trying to find like, okay, who's a wide receiver 3? Or perception is that they're the wide receiver 3 on their team. And I've seen both sides of Keenan Allen, right? Like I've seen Keenan Allen look really good, and then I've seen the photos, and again, you don't know if it's Photoshopped or not, but I've seen Keenan Allen. It's like, what did you eat this summer? Did you eat like 16 pounds of cake, bro? Like, what are you doing?
He's doing it like a Mac from It's Always Sunny thing, man.
Yeah, like yeah. My friends made me fat. Yeah, like what is happening? But anyway, my point is I was like, all right, Rome, Diggs, like because Rome goes about a round later than Diggs does.
Yes.
Diggs is still being drafted like he's he's being drafted as the 3rd receiver. Like Diggs is going. I've seen drafts where Diggs goes ahead of Tank.
Makes no sense to me. Like
I don't get that. I don't understand.
Tank almost made my value picks. He was real close for me.
Right.
Yeah, Rome is going to do his best Cortland Sutton impression, but significantly more talented with elite upside of Keenan, who's dealing with a foot issue currently.
Yeah.
Deals with more foot issues. I mean, Rome to the actual moon, probably a little bit farther than that. But even if it stays the way it is, plus with Cole Kmet and Swift getting in there as well, his biggest asset that no matter who's on the field, he is the red zone weapon. I mean, by far, I think he is the number 1 wide receiver in the red zone, passing up DJ.
Yeah. It's because there's nobody that can. I mean, you know me. I'm not in on DeAndre Swift. I never have been. It's just hard for me to envision a world where Swift is just the goal line guy or is like catching, passing touchdowns. Like it's going to be hard for him to take stuff away if they're going to throw it around the goal line.
If you're going to bet on a guy, you probably shouldn't bet on the Bears getting it right. I mean, that's
no, I don't.
He didn't work anywhere else, but he'll work on the Bears. That's something that no one said ever.
Did you see this episode of Hard Knocks? Have you seen this week's episode?
I haven't seen this week's episode yet.
Okay. I want you to watch it, and I want you to watch Caleb's face when he's in his meeting with Matt Eberflus. And then I want you to text me afterwards when you see it, because I want to know exactly what your thought is, because I promise you it's the same thought that I had. But
we'll be talking.
For those that are in the chat, if you have not watched this week's episode, don't ruin it for Kendall, but please go watch when Matt Eberflus brings Caleb in, and Caleb's face it's bro, I laughed out loud. It was priceless.
I will make sure I'm not sober for this.
No, you got to watch it. So look, if y'all aren't subscribed, I threw the links in way earlier, but let me jump in again one more time. There's the Fantasy Football Tavern, so you can subscribe to Kendall's page. Great content over there. And then obviously if you're here, you're probably already subscribed to my page, but let's go ahead and jump in as well. That is going to do it for our show tonight. Next week, 4 p.m., we are going to be going through Thursday night football breakdown. I'm effing stoked.
Let's go. Let's go, baby.
We got a football game next week. I'm so happy. It's football season.
Ready to win some leagues, dude?
Dude, I was just thinking about that. Like I was just doing my finances and I was like, how much money do I have in best ball leagues? And I was like, what do I need to come? I was like looking, I was like, let's go. It's time to start putting points on the board. Enough drafting. So yeah, thanks for being here. As always, love the guys in the chat. Thanks for participating. And as always, thanks for another episode of The Extra Point. We will see y'all next Thursday at 4 p.m. And that will be my in season. That will be my permanent time. We'll be staying at 4 p.m. Pacific. So those East Coasters can get a quick bite of dinner and then hop into The Extra Point. And I promise you, I'll cut the show off. We will wrap on time so that we can all be on time for kickoff. If you're not subscribed, jump in and you can see the links in the chat. Make sure to give Kendall a follow over at the Fantasy Football Tavern. For everybody at Get Right Fantasy Network and for myself, Phil Ruskin, host of The Extra Point, have a great night. Enjoy Labor Day weekend. And the next time we see you, we'll only be hours away from the kickoff of the NFL season. Peace.